You are watching Kings. Every Saturday, we tell the story of how big brands conquered the world. How Apple became the king of luxury tech. Welcome to Alux.com, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. Hello, Aluxers, and welcome back. It's great to have you here with us today as we take a look behind the world of Apple and how it grew into one of the world's most valuable brands. In this video, we'll be looking at how Apple started, the strategy it used, the struggles it had to overcome, and if you watch until the end, you'll learn what the future holds for this tech giant. Apple, the big picture. Apple recently celebrated its 43rd anniversary as a company. As of June 2019, Apple is recorded as the second most valuable brand in the world, sitting above giants like Google and Microsoft. Headquartered in California, this $205.5 billion company delivers approximately $265 billion in revenue annually. As a technology company with more than 132,000 employees throughout its 506 retail stores in 24 countries worldwide, Apple proves they are here to dominate the tech industry. But let's take a look at how Apple got to take its place as king. The beginning. The birth of Apple began in the mid-1970s as an assembled circuit board called Apple I, invented by co-founder Steve Wozniak. The Apple I didn't have a keyboard or a monitor, not even a case. It was just a circuit board. Steve Wozniak was an Albanian inventor born in 1950. It was while working at Hewlett-Packard designing calculators that he met Steve Jobs. Jobs was 5 years younger than Wozniak at the time while working for the arcade game company Atari in the 1970s. Atari gave Steve Jobs the assignment of creating a circuit board for one of their video games. Jobs, having limited knowledge and experience of circuit boards, made a deal with Wozniak to share the pay if he could design the circuit board. Though Wozniak designed the circuit board, it wasn't accepted by Atari, the same invention that would later lead him to the Apple I. Just 2 years later, Wozniak designed, developed, and tested his first prototype. By 1976, the Apple I was complete. He first offered it to Hewlett-Packard while he worked there. However, HP denied him on several occasions. It was Steve Jobs' idea to sell the Apple I themselves. They sold most of their belongings and assembled the first Apple I boards at Steve Jobs' house. They sold the Apple I for $666, and their first 50 system boards were sold to a new computer shop called the Byte Shop in California. Apple Computers, now called Apple Inc., was founded that same year. The struggle. During this time, computers took up entire rooms and were only used by large companies. Being pioneers in the industry of personal computing, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak had all the ideas, but one thing they lacked was money. Though they had an order for 50 system boards with the Byte Shop, they didn't have the resources to fulfill the order. They were both turned down by banks and Atari, where Jobs worked and wanted payment for any components they sold to him. In the end, the Byte Shop agreed to give Jobs and Wozniak the parts on credit. Not out of the woods yet, Steve Jobs convinced Intel executive and multimillionaire Mike Markukla to invest $250,000 into Apple in the late 70s. Over the next 3 years, Apple saw incredible growth as sales grew approximately $118 million. However, during that time, other companies began to emerge. IBM launched its own personal computers and took full advantage when Apple was facing losses due to the lack of interest in their Apple III. Apple also faced a lot of in-house issues as Wozniak decided to leave Apple in the 80s. He was simply no longer interested in running Apple computers. Steve Jobs then brought on John Sculley to be president. However, due to tension over the drop in sales, Jobs wanted Sculley removed, but the board supported Sculley and was Steve Jobs that was removed from his position. Sculley was made an offer by Microsoft founder Bill Gates to license its software, but declined. Unbeknownst to him at the time, Microsoft would go on to become Apple's largest and toughest competitor in the 80s and 90s. Though Steve Jobs was no longer at Apple, he had already put things in motion. Before he left, he made a deal with a small company by the name of Adobe, and together they dawned the era of desktop publishing. Strategy. Apple knew that innovation would keep them afloat, and what they needed was an operating system. Their first course of action was buying out Next Software, which was the company Steve Jobs founded after being removed from Apple. Jobs became the interim CEO and immediately began implementing his plans to revitalize Apple. One of his first acts was forming an alliance with Microsoft to create a version of their Office Suite software for Apple. This would help them to retain their current customers, as well as gain those that previously didn't use Apple because it lacked the popular Microsoft software. Then, under his new Think Differently campaign, Steve Jobs launched the iMac in 1998. Its unique design and use of modern technology made it a favorite, and Apple sold approximately 800,000 units in 5 months. Not long after that, he reimagined the personal computer and introduced the iBook, the first Apple personal laptop, taking the computer from being stationary to being mobile. 3 years later, Apple launched their iPod, a digital music player freeing up customers from portable cassettes and CD players, giving them the capacity of taking more music with them. As the slogan at the time said, 1,000 songs in your pocket. There was definitely no signs of slowing down for Steve Jobs. In 2007, he showed the world the shift Apple was making in the direction of consumer electronics even further by launching the iPhone with phenomenal success. The defining moment. Though Apple saw early moments of glory with its colorful graphics and their collaboration with VisiCalc and Adobe, Apple's defining moment was the return of Steve Jobs and its alliance with Microsoft. Nothing says greatness quite like the first personal computer company joining forces with the first software company in the world. The value. It's undeniable that Apple is one of the most successful companies in the world. Their vision and innovation really do set them apart from the rest. Let's look at how they've maintained their title and earned such loyalty from their customers. When you think about Apple, the main person that comes to mind is Steve Jobs. We believe that everyone would agree that Steve Jobs was synonymous with the brand and just as famous. Even after his passing, you think of Steve Jobs before Tim Cook's, their current CEO. Steve Jobs took an active role in marketing and was the driving force behind its products. After he died, most people expected Apple would succumb to major losses, but their success continued. Since the 70s, Apple continues to launch innovative, yet modern and stylish-looking products that always come with a new assortment of upgrades. If you've ever watched any of Apple's presentations, whether it's an update for an operating system, new colors, or a camera feature, Apple always presented them with excitement. News from Apple became something you didn't want to miss. We've already touched on Apple redirecting some of its focus to consumer electronics and their ability to have a fluid business plan. It's one of the reasons they're so successful. Apple is constantly studying the market and adjusting to meet the customer's needs. In fact, that's the reason they expanded into offering a wider range of products beyond computers to tablets, watches, MP3 players, and digital virtual assistants. Apple's goal is to keep reinventing, and it's not that the technology doesn't already exist. Customers simply believe Apple does it better. Apple has also made shopping for their products an experience at their 506 branded retail stores worldwide. Apple believed that traditional retail stores would not provide the experience they wanted to inspire brand loyalty among their consumers. Controversy. You would think that Apple had been through enough having to deal with their in-house issues. Unfortunately, more controversy followed. Apple's been under scrutiny for allegedly collaborating with the U.S. surveillance program, PRISM. They were one of the first companies named for being part of the program, but they have continued to deny any involvement and stated they do not provide any government agency direct access to their servers. Within the last 6 years, Apple has been penalized for its tax practices as well. It's been said to use a special double Irish agreement to reduce taxes, and it did not pay taxes for 5 years as a benefit of their deal with the Irish government. The European Union has since ordered Apple to pay a fine of $14.5 billion. And Aluxers, did you know there are countries that billionaires actually go to hide their money? If not, learn all about it by watching our video, The 10 Countries Where Billionaires Hide Their Money. The results. Apple recognized that to be competitive in this industry, they needed to ensure they stayed ahead. Forming partnerships and, in some instances, acquiring companies gave them that advantage. One such partnership was the AIM Alliance in the 1990s, which was formed by Apple, IBM, and Motorola to create a new platform which would use IBM and Motorola hardware with Apple's software. Later that year, they launched the Power Macintosh, which carried the Motorola Power PC processor. After many flopped products, failed attempts to upgrade the Mac OS, and weeks away from bankruptcy, one of their notable acquisitions was Next for their Next Step operating system. This also led to the return of Steve Jobs. Apple proceeded to build a portfolio of digital production applications through companies they would acquire. Companies such as Macromedia, A-Start, Spruce Technologies, SoundJam MP, Nothing Real, and eMagic was among the first to be assimilated into Apple's powerhouse of technology. What Apple has shown us is that to execute a great vision, it requires great leadership, and that's not something that everyone is capable of. The future. Apple is known for staying 2 years ahead of its competition. The products released today were approved 2 years ago, and upon their release, it's highly likely that the plans for the next model are already in the works. Tim Cook shared at Apple's annual meeting, "There's a long, great roadmap of fantastic products on the horizon." Though he was not specific about the products, there has been talks about augmented reality smart glasses and about Apple venturing into the world of self-driving cars. One thing is for certain, though, is that Apple has begun developing its services category. There have been improvements to Apple Music, the App Store, and they may be launching a new streaming TV service with original television series. Netflix may have something to worry about, especially as consumers who subscribe to Netflix through their iPhone or iPad app, 30% goes to Apple every month for a year. Situations such as these are key factors in Apple's growth. It's clear that Apple's long-term profitability is due to control and not allowing their products to be standardized. However, unless Apple creates the next iMac or iPhone, recreating some of their historical profits may be quite a task, especially with a trade war between the US and China. That trade war threatens Apple through tariffs on its parts and products manufactured in China, as well as from China's slowing economy, which makes the appeal of a pricey smartphone less attractive. As of 2018, Apple recorded its highest annual revenue at approximately $265.6 billion. About $218 billion was generated by iPhone sales, almost 82% of the company's total global revenue. Closing. Apple has been a pioneer in the computer industry on several occasions throughout history. It believes in innovation and removing any boundaries that limit creativity in order to produce valuable products for its consumers. After 43 years, it is undeniable that Apple has provided immeasurable value and made an impact on technology, influencing how we use it in our daily lives. So far, Apple remains the king of luxury tech. Now, Aluxers, before we wrap this up, we want to know, which of Apple's products and services do you use and own? Let us know in the comments. And of course, for sticking with us until the end, here's your bonus. In the world of Apple, its products do come with a price, but if you have an extra $127,000, you can get their iPhone in 18-karat gold, courtesy of one of London's luxury product makers, Gold Genie. But why stop there? Why not go ahead and add some diamonds? But take note, you will need to pay half as a deposit when you pre-order. Thank you for spending some time with us, Aluxers. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss another video. We also handpicked these videos for you to watch next. As always, the conversation continues on social media. Thanks again, and we can't wait to have you back tomorrow.